to you. Happy birthday, dear Jackie. Happy birthday to you.
It was yesterday, by the way. General stores.
General stores and Edwards and
Anything to do with selling.
which sell. Anybody have anything to Fred back there? You must have some stories to tell about
You're going to start the sugar program?
what?
Oh, because I have an article.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't know.
Did you want to move up closer?
Okay, sure.
Let's go.
Yep.
Well, I have this book to read, and I didn't want to interrupt anybody, but I figured if I didn't read this, Ursula would kill me.
Well, we'll have that first then.
Okay, and in the meantime, the reason for reading this story is so that everybody will get their mind working and remember back, so that when I finish reading the story, hopefully the words will come out so that you can remember for us young ones that don't remember. Some phases of early country life. The country store was in many respects a departmental store on a small scale, for a well-equipped store contained a little of everything. On one side were to be seen shelves well filled with groceries, crockery ware, and a few patent medicines such as blood purifiers, painkillers, and liniments. On the other side, a well-assorted stock of dry goods, including prints, woolens, muslins, calico, and cottons. At the back, a lot of hardware comprising nails, paints, oils, putty, glass, and garden tools, as well as an assortment of boots and shoes, from the tiny copper toe to the farmer's big cowhide. In the back room, at the rear end of the store, were to be found barrels of sugar and New Orleans molasses, crates of eggs, and tubs of butter and lard. With this miscellaneous mixture, tea, coffee, dry goods, codfish, and boots and shoes, the odor of the country store was truly a composite one and trying to the olfactory organs of the visitor. The country merchant was usually a man in good circumstances, for he was obliged in most cases to give a year's credit, the farmers paying their bills in the fall of the year after the threshing or the killing, their only source of revenue at any other time being from butter and eggs, which their wives took to the country store, usually once a week, in exchange for store goods. Perhaps there was no more popular place of meeting than the country store. After the day's work was over, it was customary for many of men in the neighborhood, especially the farmers, hired men, who had no other place of amusement to go, to gather here. Even if they did not have occasion to buy anything, they would drop in for a few minutes to while away the time, have a chat, see someone they wished, hear politics discussed, and generally learn all the latest news. The society of the country store had a peculiar fascination for many of them, for there generally happened to be someone there who was gifted with the faculty of cracking jokes, telling funny yarns, or interesting stories. Besides, it was a comfortable place, especially on the long winter evenings when they would gather around the big box stove, lounge on the counters, sit on the boxes and barrels, puff away at their pipes, chew tobacco, and chaff one another to their heart's content. I am sorry to say many of them were as uncouth as their habits, and language was often used that was neither polite nor edifying. Still, this can be said to their credit, they generally managed to show a respectful air if a lady or clergyman entered. Occasionally, there would be heard a loud whoop at the door. Soon afterwards, some big burly farmer might be seen entering with a long riding whip in his hand, pants tucked into his boots, and long coat reaching to his heels. Well, he asked for a pound of tea or a plug of tobacco. Some rustic from behind the stove would call out, "Good morning, Sam. How are the roads up your way?" and sundry other questions pertaining to the neighborhood. Usually the post office was located in the country store, and this brought a still greater diversity of people together. They would flock in about the time the mail was expected to arrive, wait patiently until it was distributed, and then file out one by one. In the early days, before the temperance movement began, whiskey being cheap, it was common for country stores, who also sold it, to keep a barrel of it, with a faucet attached, and a glass for the free use of customers. And that is that for my dramatic reading. Well, don't everybody speak at once?
I found something at the museum of Charles Kistis, dealer in general merchandise. This is an old calendar, 1907, and it's not in very good shape, but it's quite precious to us. Anybody like to have a look?
Was that the store where the bank was?
And I found an old cocoa box. Purity, cocoa for purity, breakfast cocoa. Unexcelled, and it says on the bottom, no chemicals are used in its preparation. So they must have used chemicals years ago already. It's old. Yeah. No chemicals. So I thought that's kind of funny. So many years ago they talked about chemicals in food.
No date on that.
No, I've looked in the files and it's from Mrs. Bain, but it didn't give a date.
My recollection of country stores is Steve Pat Robinson. Okay. Deal in eggs and so forth. Cracker Barrel store. Then I remember the store up the street where the store is now, and across the street was the doctor. I remember being in there once with my father, and the doctor's wife came in, Dr. Buell. She asked for grapefruit, and they didn't have any. She says, "Oh my goodness," she said, "the doctor doesn't think he can eat breakfast if he doesn't have grapefruit." She fired out. Of course, the doctor was kind of a character, Dr. Buell. I was supposed to have been a girl, and every time he'd see me, he'd say to my father, "John, why don't you put a dress on that boy? Make a girl." Have it all in her. Where was your country store, Fred? Chippewa?
Kister store,
Where was that? Where
country store.
the garage is now, or
Kister store, where the garage is
on the
now,
corner? Well, where was Herbert's store?
where the big building on the other corner,
The Colmeyer
the
building.
Colmeyer building.
Where they built the new post office.
Yeah. There was 3 or 4 sections to that store. There's 4 front doors. Her store was one of them.
Well, is the old building there part of it, or is that?
All the big buildings, the original, 4 doors facing Main Street. There's a butcher shop with one end for one door. Post office in one door there before the addition was built on this end of it.
On the calendar, it says Montrose too, Fred. Did they have a store at Montrose as well?
Yes, it wasn't at the Montrose that we know of now. It was Montrose Yards, railroad yards. You'd go down, to get to it now, you'd go down Stanley Street and turn to the left in one of them side streets there. And it was back in there along the railroad yard. He only worked, I don't know, 2 days a week or part-time.
Were there other stores or anything else there?
I don't think there was anything else there. It was more or less railroad hands, I guess, railroad outfit, patronizing.
She had some old stores in Richmond, did you ever?
I was just thinking, do you remember Pete Schwartz?
Sure,
Do you remember?
sure.
You know, he was a shoemaker. He made shoes. He made my dad's wedding shoes. Really, if I remember correctly. He was quite a character.
Yeah, there's a little shop there just south of where Lloyd Wales.
Right along the sidewalk, eh? There's a little shop there, and he lived right by, on the big house. The house, big house there, still there. Schwartz. Then he had a brother, Jack Schwartz, Ridgeway. He was a pharmacist at a drugstore there. A store, still up on the top there. Stewart's, well, now there's still goes by Stewart's drugstore. Chinese, I think he's Chinese, it's running it now. But, Jack Schwartz, he was a blacksmith. You know, his way there. He made wagons, buggies. You know, I'll see. My great-grandfather, he came to Willoughby from Berkeley about 1850 and bought a farm off the town line there, like Morningstar, that was there now, but it's 100 acres on the town line. He bought that in 1850. But he and his 2 brothers are buried in Rosewood Cemetery. It's quite a story there with 9 brothers came over from Pennsylvania and bought 300 acres along the Nye Road in the early 1800s. And Adam, my great-grandfather, sold it, and they came down to Willoughby. And my grandfather, Peter, took over his Willoughby and paid off another. I was 8 in the family, 6 girls and 2 boys, when we had to pay off the 5 girls together. 6 in the other boy. The one brother and his brother, he went up to Dunville and changed his name from N-I-G-H to N-I-E. We're still good friends. We're up there as well. We had a big reunion up there a couple of years ago. And one night, so we put money in for our great-grandfather. His great-great-grandfather, my great-grandfather, is passed somewhere in Roosevelt Cemetery. But he and Philip and what's the other one's name? Julia. 3 brothers, all buried up there in Roseville Cemetery, Roseville Road, bush there. At the time finding it, I didn't know it was there until my cousin Roy told me a couple years ago. Back there, shooting up there.
Did he have a property where Ross and I was at?
It was a ground deed in the early 1800s, 200 acres along the town line, given to a man by the name of John. The deed, well, it was Stark, but they changed it to Sher. He had the 200 acres along the town line back. Well, then, when my great-grandfather, bought that, he bought 100 acres along the town line. And Ross lived back there on the other 100 acres. But there was 200 acres there at one time, a crown deed. And the name of John Stark. I got that off the register office.
Well, that 100 acres along the town line would have come from the side road into the east.
That's right, yeah.
Would have been fairly...
Came right down, so pretty close down to the side of the road. Well, there was a road, you can see yet where it was, you know. But then my Adam bought that 100 acres there. You know, on the road.
Where were the buildings where Mike started?
Yeah, just back, yeah. Yeah, that garage that there at Mike's is, that's some of the old boards of the old log house yet. The well is still back
Well,
there.
then your father was born there?
Oh, yeah. The whole family is,
How many was in that family?
Well, there was 10 grew up, but there was 13 altogether. It's a large family.
When did your father locate out where you were now?
Where we're living now?
Yes,
When?
yes.
1917. It's interesting going back, and any of you, if you can follow, there's a book out now of the Nye family, right from Germany. Well, we haven't got it, but our oldest son has it. He's making his crafts, but it was NPU in Germany. It was NIE, NIGH, NIGHE, and NYE, all the same gang that came over from Germany.
And whereabouts in Germany? Alsace or?
Yeah, in that area. They came from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Here the 1800s,
Yeah.
migrated over here.
See, the Willocks came from out that
Oh,
way.
yeah,
Oh,
sure.
Among some, yeah. Things were getting pretty bad over
Oh,
there
yeah.
at that time.
What about Black Creek store, Grace? Do you know anything about that? Can you tell us anything about it?
Black Creek store.
Yeah.
Well, that was where we bought our candy and gum. A penny. But what was more interesting than what was in the store, I think, was the surroundings. The Black Creek Bridge, the building of that. I was about somewhere around 5, I forget, when that came up in council here, and my dad had to go to Ottawa, and I don't know what he did there, but anyway, he transacted the business, I guess. I think he was Reeve, I'm not sure, but I think he was Reeve at Willoughby at that time. There was an old frame one, with an upper frame over it, and then when the parkway went through, they put this better one in. And I think it was a great experience to us living along the river when that boulevard was put through and the parkway was developed, because now in our own case, we were about almost a mile below Black Creek, and the surveyors came with their tripods and all things were going, they went in all the yards, and the line came about this far from our veranda, so we know what that meant. And we had to, either, they said they couldn't move the house, it had been built in sections, and it wouldn't be practical, so they started over. And there was a lot of work to it. It was a concrete block house, and Dave Dean from Seamsville made the blocks right in the backyard. And this was kind of a cute little thing I always remember. They moved to the buildings, the barn, and I think there were about 5 buildings they moved back, Well, my dad had sold a horse, our favorite horse, but she was getting old. And she was beautiful. She was a chestnut with black face and with white face and white feet. But she brought us all our little colts, so she was special. And he sold her, we couldn't get over. He sold her down the side of here. And a few days after she was gone, they moved the buildings. And she broke loose down there. She wanted to come home. She came all the way up from our place. She got there, she looked and looked. We saw her. It was maybe supper time. And here she was standing crossways in the road looking in. Something was wrong, she was home, and yet her body was gone. So she stood there a long time, and she went out to where Dad was in the council for Willoughby, and they had these doors at the top and open. And she stood there and looked at Dad, and he didn't help her out any. And she found the horse stable there. And she went in her stall, and there was another horse in there. But it happened to be her own son. she got in there and she wedged in with him. And you know, we cried over that. He said, she's got to stay home. And she did. He took her back. He said the work on the farm was too hard for her now. But I never saw such a human look on any animal, I don't think, as I did on her when she was looking at that barn, what had happened. It was gone. And it was just me. But one of the there were exciting things went on when the parkway came through. There was a telephone, for one thing. It was like magic to go to that telephone and talk with somebody down along the road, just stand there, you know, where you had to run down and see them through all the minutes. Plumbing, I think, was the most important to us. And I can remember when we first moved in, going to the tap and getting a glass of water. And I looked at it and I thought, now this is strange. Not only going to the river, nothing brought it up, but here it is in the glass for me to drink. I couldn't get over that. It was, these things were like, almost like miracles, the way they came, so much of it was.
They pumped that water in the river with a gasoline engine in the basement of the house.
Yes. And,
I remember that. Of course,
it was a big tank. And,
gasoline engine down in the basement, right in the cellar, like exhaust pipe outside.
and the Patty Miles train was another thing up around the store, you know, the station. The folks, the woman who was running the store, Stella Jackson, she was station agent. And the Patty Miles train made about 4 round trips part of the time, very winter and summer. And there was also a dock there before my time when we landed with lumber, a lot of lumber, right at the left store. And I went to Fort Erie High School on this Patty Miles train. And there was a boy who went too. He wouldn't care if I told his name, Bud Bean. No, and you know, the one on the team, he's her brother. He was so mischievous, and he'd get into mischief when he should have been at the station getting the train to come home. And there was a man there that he teased, so he was, not all right, you know. And this fellow used to get angry at Bud and chase him around. One time he chased him, Bud couldn't make it on the train. But he was running along the side of the train. The engineer just did this. He was full of truth. He kept going running till we got almost halfway down to the yards, and he took him up in the engine. And that old fellow was yelling up at the station in Fort Erie and things like that about the train rides, you know, they were wonderful. And it was a problem to us because now the train and the power line went with the railroad tracks. And everybody else seemed to have power before we did. They had it up there at Ridgeway a couple of years before we had it. It was going right through the farm. And the problem with these tracks, there were fences on both sides, you see, so nothing could get onto the tracks, and gates. And we had to take the cows to pasture through these 2 gates. And if some of them were pretty frisky, they'd get down, you know, along the railroad track. And it was, and they picked blackberries along the railroad track. Oh, it was just full. from Blackfeet down where the store was. The store there too, I think they were all gathering places for, especially for the men in the evening. And old Dad would come home with all the news.
So Jinx has owned that store for a good many years.
Yes, they
now.
did. Mhm. Yeah.
Was Mrs. Jenks in town?
Mhm.
Because I remember my dad, Team Lumber, must have been a dock there, eh?
There was, like I
My
said.
dad, Team Lumber, a man by the name of Talon from Blackfeet, Collier. He was just a young chap.
The horse being with
Yeah.
Then O'Bean used to come over and meet all the trains. He was younger than he lived to be in his nineties.
You remember Menlo Bean, don't you?
Yes, I remember.
Oh, of course you were bad.
I remember that. I didn't know that at all.
Didn't they all have a song?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Some of the people may not realize, but Grace is the sister to Doris Fisher.
When was your house built? Did your father built the big house? Did he?
Yes,
You're gonna get her to tell her age, Charles, that's what you're at.
She was telling him where the blocks were made there, so I thought, well, she must have somebody to knowledge.
about, 1910 or 11.
They threw the gravel way up, searched the foundation for the blocks, should they?
They made the blocks in the
Yeah, but they
back.
drew the gravel from up the lake.
Yes, somehow.
But
And they did for,
yeah.
for building the boulevard through there. That was all brought in wagons. And there was one man had a nice little team. They weren't so big as the others, but they said he could pull the boats. The wagon was all heaped up. $100 to do it. Then they found out he had a false bottom wagon. I don't know who it was, but it was really something. We had to feed the what do you call this, with the tripods. Surveyors, no. And we fed them, and then the masons, and we already had 33 trees in the building. It was a whole new lot of things for us.
Like when they built the boulevard there, was that laid with stone, was it? Is that what they, like when they?
Well, I think there was a stone foundation on
Yeah,
it.
that's
No,
what,
he means the road.
yeah, it was crushed road, yeah.
Crushed
road,
stone,
crushed
yes,
stone,
it was
yeah.
crushed stone.
Went right from mud to crushed road.
And
I
culverts.
think a lot of that came from Birdie.
Yes,
They used to have the wooden bridges, and we could always tell when someone was coming, they rattled.
yes.
But after that, and there was a hill, but there was a ditch between our old house and our new. And I can so well remember crossing over that bridge. It never had anything but a plank. That's all. They carried all the milk and everything back and forth.
The old house on the other side of the ditch.
It was on
Yeah. Side.
the old
Or,
house.
yeah.
Yeah, on the south side.
Yeah, was it?
And the big house on the north side. Yes. And when I put, we were quite excited when we moved across the yard and up into the new house with its plumbing and its telephone and everything. And had the first supper there, and after supper, I thought, there'd be nobody in the old house tonight. And I felt kind of bad. I left the table. Nobody missed it. They were all kind of tired, Nobody missed me. I went over to the old house. I thought I wanted to say goodbye to the old house. So I went over there, And I went through the old house all by myself, and when I went to the back door, I thought, this will always be my home, my real home. And I'll never forget. I'm going to just look at everything and remember. And you know, to this day, I can tell you what the wallpaper was like in all the rooms, and the carpets where all the windows were, and the kind of tie backs we had on the drapes, all that stays with me. And when I don't know how long I was in there, but when I came out, it was beginning to get twilight. Stars were shining. And where I really said goodbye was, I found this on my way over, was where my little bed had been, in a dark corner. I lay down there and cried as long as I could cry. And then I got up and came out and looked over to the house. I thought, oh, that's nice, you know. And I was all right. I didn't get any
That house that she's talking about is back across the marsh.
Yes.
I don't know just what road it's on. Tell me a couple beyond the side and back, what's the name of
I
them?
don't
The old road is back there.
Well, on this side of the marsh or across,
Oh, across the marsh.
there's Willowdale Road.
That's one it's on, isn't it? We've
I
been
don't
in there, we
Well,
go back.
Was it near the school on the corner, or which way from the school?
No, that,
North.
yeah.
On
What's the-
Mom's
there's another
80th
one
birthday.
that's back.
for birthday celebration. We took her back there. And when we located it,
Back.
not where Harris
That house, Frank Tuck moved
Pardon?
Frank Tuck moved that house.
Frank Tuck.
Did what?
Frank Tuft, he moved the house, you know.
Oh, I think so. And the barn they moved was one of these.
Well, yeah, the barn, they just
yes,
moved it back.
They just,
Went, you know, they just-
yes, but the house was on rollers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's still standing back there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We put that.
And when we went there on Mom's 80th birthday, I explained who we were, or she did. And she started it, and the man kept looking at her, and he didn't know whether she should come in or not. And after she had explained that she was born in that house 8 years ago, he said, well, what her name was? And he said, are you any relation to Willoughby? And she said, I'm his mother. Come in. He said, right away. So we went in, and they told us to make ourselves at home, you know. They were very, very nice. And
Whereabouts is that, Fred? Whereabouts is that house then? What place?
Well, I don't know who lives in the houses now.
it was, the new house was built for tenants.
From, White Pigeon. What's that road? Chester. Come into the
Corner?
first corner, to the right. The second house, I think, now.
We've been.
Second house on the left, you mean, as you're going out?
Going out, the second house on the left.
Yeah.
We've been.
Motorcycle guys were there now.
There was a barn there too, but I think it's down now.
Barn burned there
Barn burned. I think so.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
There was a Ukrainian fellow in there. For a while. I don't think he's there now.
I know it's to a dance, and I was only about that high, I guess. But more than I went with.
When they were building that house, there were 3 generations to go into it. And we knew that Grandma dreaded leaving it. And he didn't make it easy. He died before it was finished.
But they hadn't changed that house any then, from,
No, when we were in it,
You mean the old house?
yeah, the old house, I mean the old house. The
No,
back,
no,
the back on
no,
the
it's-
other side.
I was dumbfounded. The one door was open, and, well, it was a bedroom again. And we were sitting in the dining room with this, and I could look right in. And I said, for goodness sakes, Mom, when you left the house, there were violets on the wallpaper, and look there were big violets all over the wallpaper.
Still there.
Not the same ones, of course, but much the same design.
Wasn't that strange, so they could move it and then still leave it the same?
Things have a way of repeating themselves. Like the horse.
Well, I've not been much to move. I moved once. I put in, been there ever since.
But we always had a lot of fun in the big house. That was,
Yeah.
that was
There was a woman planned that house, and she thought of
it
everything.
was a great place.
Yes, well, the doors,
Parties
you
there.
know, they went back into the walls so that you could have twice as many people in the room. Because you didn't have to make room for doors swinging or anything. That was one thing she thought. A lot more. I like to take up too much time.
Oh, it's been very interesting.
Yeah. They-
When you wrote the Patty Mouse Express, or whatever they called it, what fare did you pay?
What,
The fair, how much it cost you?
Yeah.
To go Black Creek to 48.
I got a book of tickets for $3.20, and they lasted about a month.
That was going 5 days a week.
Mhm.
Go back and forth.
Mhm.
My dad, after he was married in 97, somewhere between 19, figure it a bit, somewhere between 1900 and 1907, I was know when it was, 1909, rather. He worked on the railroad in the wintertime on a snowplow. They used to use the snowplow to go down the whole back before Erie, Niagara Falls. The snowplow in front of an engine, you know. Tell the snowbanks to get in all the snow.
Well, I came across this book, but I don't know how I got it. Like on the farm, but apparently it was put out in the bicentennial Ontario. And it shows here, working on the lines, on the telephone lines.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
And so there's a picture in here of a barn raising. I'm going to give this to the museum, by the way. And there's a lady feeding her chickens.
Yeah.
And here they are gathering turnips in the wagon. Remember how they used to do that? And the lady with her cream separator here. And there's the barn raising. And it shows using the binder and also a combine. And there's the Raleigh man. Which is, you can remember when they came around through the country. I don't remember them coming like that, but I remember the Raleigh man coming, knocking on the door. And this is a calendar put out by the Wayne Society. And there's are all sketched. And you are familiar with that in that area. There's Chambers Corners, and there's some from Winger General Store.
Yeah, that's still there.
It's still there, yes, it looks very much like that.
Yeah, that's
Yes, it
right.
looks very much like that
There in the
today.
corner, right? Yeah.
But I'm going to leave it for you to look at. And there's the blacksmith shop, and remember, I don't know where that is. But these pictures, they were all sketched. I bought it at there's the Anglican Church. Now that is right in Wednesday.
That's the Marshall, we used to call
Yeah,
it, eh?
yeah, that's right. So I'll give this to the museum now. But this calendar, I'm going to keep it. I'll put it out so people can look at it.
Another peddlers, didn't Joe what's his name, Berger used to fiddle in the.
Charlie Burger, Charlie Burger, oh,
With the
yeah.
horses.
You remember him, Freddie? Oh, my
Horse
gosh.
wagon.
We got a,
It's in one of the calendars.
yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah. it's
Don't
one of the-
remember what one though.
Yeah, one of the calendars several years ago, you know, the, Charlie Burger.
Did he butcher? I guess.
Yeah, oh, yeah, it was, yeah.
I think the first meat peddler I was Harry Grenham.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when he used to go
Oh,
through the
yeah.
country. He went for a good many
Yeah,
years.
yeah, Harry, yeah, a long time. And Roy Fitz, up in Norway there, he went into Fort Erie, he
Yeah.
was there for a long time.
And he used to buy calves and he
Yeah.
got my dad on it.
Yeah. Roy had quite a business there at
You know, when we were sitting here tonight, I can't figure this out. We used to have oyster suppers here. They were quite the thing. One or two
Freddie
every,
remember those.
every winter. didn't
Ever, I said somewhere too.
they? And do you remember where they cooked? Right there in that corner, didn't they?
Big dark stove.
And the tables along there.
Why, sure.
There was a platform up there. Many times I stood up there and recited and played the mouth organ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember with the platform there, used to have some programs here, and the Whitting boys, remember, they were twins, weren't they, Roy's sons? Were they twins?
No.
No, maybe not.
One of Tom and George.
Tom and George.
Yeah.
They were quite the boys, they were about this high, and they were fooling around, one give the other one a push and knocked them off, fell right off the platform. They were boys.
Who put the oyster suppers on?
Oh, Institute, Women's Institute.
Yes, mostly Institute. The Institute was very active.
And there was a group of neighbors had the oyster supper. They had their two houses, one winter and our house another winter. Just a group of neighbors.
Yeah.
It's all today. It's pretty reasonable out here.
Yeah, oh, hey.
Where did you get them, Fred? Were they local here?
I guess they get them at a local store, you know.
In Chippewa.
In Chippewa, yes.
Yeah, Mark Smith and Rich Brady used to watch it. He was in church there in Richmond. They had a much to supper every winter, in February before Land Day. And, it was a big deal.
How they kept them fresh.
I don't know, Mark.
Or maybe they brought them in and didn't keep them very
I
long.
think that mostly like Richmond, they
Yeah.
get them in Buffalo probably.
Yeah, they wouldn't keep them on hand.
Over on
very
a
long.
train, and 4 trains came into Ridgeway there at a time of the day, you know. And you or not. 4 passenger trains, mail trains in a day there in Ridgeway.
Is that right?
Sure.
Oh, nothing there, no.
One in the morning, one at noon, late afternoon, early afternoon, later in the evening. Buffalo divers.
Went right through.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Freight trains going through there all the time. Busy with the spot.
Speaking of oysters, one night we had council meeting here. They got through. Do you know about this? They got through quite early, and well, what were they going to do? They didn't want to go home right away. So let's have an oyster supper. Somebody drove down to Chippewa and got the oysters, and John Flowey was selling milk at that time, and he had a can of milk to ship in the morning, or part of it. And the rest had all separated theirs, I guess. And the men had an oyster supper also. They did it themselves.
Was your father Reed, right?
He might have been. I know he cooked the oysters. But they all did something, you know. Each one had their job, and they put on oyster
But was your father, he was on council before he died, was it?
No, he wasn't lead. He was
on the
only,
council.
He was on the council.
Yes. He was clerk for a while.
Was he?
He was secretary of the school board for a long time too, wasn't he?
He died very suddenly, didn't he?
Yes,
Catching the train or the dummy?
yes, he was on the, well, we call it the dummy, it was a train, a car, one car that went over the international bridge before the ocean. He was on there on his way to a Brotherhood convention.
Did he fall out?
I didn't forget to change it this time.
Yeah.
I was going to tell him that I didn't.
No.
better tell us.
The table's full, doesn't matter.
Oh,
Tell us
you
anyway.
better tell us. She took the tape out.
You don't take this.
The tape got turned around now.
No, I suppose this should be confidential, but it's comical. There was one man in Willoughby, I won't tell his name, but he used to get animals that had died or were sick, you know, and so send the pelts away, I guess. I think he made something that way. But one night, in the middle of the night, he heard, Will, this was in the summer, and Dad was so tired he didn't want to get up, and Mama said, go on down. She said, he won't go away until you go down, I know that. Well, he had been, you know where, and he was making quite a racket down there. Well, we had a sick pig at the time, and Dad went down and heard him say, have you got something to trade? So they went out to Barney with what he was going to get, but I didn't know what it was. And I heard the whole thing. And they went out to the barn and rattled around there. And then they went over to the orchard and got the pig, and out she went. I had to take care of her before she went. I had to see that she was fed and watered. So I cried a little about her. I heard her go, sorry for her. But anyway, the next morning we were very anxious to see what we got for it. So we went to the barn, expected to see another little cat. There wasn't any, there was no little foal, no, not even a cat. But over in the implement shed, when we got in there, you couldn't guess what was sitting there. There was an organ. They had them in every school, you know, just one that you went like this. And there sat that organ. Well, we just loved that. There was peace and quiet in the house. The piano wasn't going all the time because the organ was better. You could express yourself better, you know, when you could use your feet too. And sad part of it was there was a nice stool, a wooden stool, and we went in with that mom and we said, come on, see what's out there. Well, she didn't look much at the organ, but she saw the stool, just what she needed. And away she went into the house carrying the stool. Well, you know, you can't play an organ standing up or anything. So we got orange grapes. We sat out there. We spent a lot of time out there. The pig was gone, but we had an organ. Not awful. All such things happen. Good old days.
Sounds like you had lots of fun.
We did. Well, as I say, there were 10 of us there. My Doris was born in the new house. She was the only one. I don't know. I say we shouldn't have tried to live with your in-laws, but we had a lot of fun. Grandpa and Grandma and everybody, you know, a lot of fun. When they're that many to do.
Fred, do you remember Elias Winger?
Oh, I certainly did.
You know, he was my great uncle.
He was your great
Yeah.
uncle.
He was my grandmother's nice brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. He lived back at Mike Miller's back in there.
Yeah.
Place, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because I remember we were down at Mike's one Sunday, visiting Mike Miller and my mother were first cousins. My dad went back to see his uncle. Why do you look at me like that?
I was just telling him, bringing me up to date. I was telling him Mike Miller was married to his father.
John Tyler was Howard's father.
Right?
John Tyler was Howard's father, eh?
Yes.
Howard, but John Tyler go with the horse when you sold him the horse. Did he use it for working on the farm?
He worked fine.
Yeah, oh yeah, he can do the John Gladys, of course, he uses it so hard.
Oh, yes, but he didn't work as hard as I guess she would have
No, he didn't
done.
have as big a
No,
farm.
well, they were getting into heavy work with the building and everything. There was heavy flowing, and she was better off down at Gladys. Yeah, Janet.
My grandmother on my mother's side is another. Mike Miller's father.
Well, speaking of stores, we had a real dandy right beside us, just a line fence between the Deals. And they were twins, and they never were married. And they lived there alone. And it had once been an active store, but now it was closed up. We couldn't go in it because he was a bootlegger. And we did a lot of business there too. We never even looked in.
You remember him, Charles? You remember Jake? Henry Jake?
Jake and Henry.
Of course, they were out there. Probably you didn't, yeah. You remember him? Yeah.
I remember the name. Yeah.
They were just below the corner there.
No, Wilkins. Well, that was your, that was your house.
That was their house.
That
Yeah.
was their house.
It was in terrible condition when we got it. They said they were the worst cases they had ever had come into Sunset King. And there was no bedding on the springs with their beds. And, one had a carpet open, and there was a half a loaf of bread in the house. Because we wouldn't go in the house, we wouldn't.
There's different ones out there that have, quite individuals. You go up the river a bit.
Oh, yes.
You remember Hank Howard?
Yes,
Remember telling about him? He lived alone in
yes.
a small house just above where Jim Sauer lives at. He never washed the dish. He used to get his own meals, so he turned the dish over. He'd off the other side. And Brother Allen used to work out there.
Yeah,
yeah.
Reggie's place,
Yeah.
of course. But Ham Howard was a real riverman. He knew that river and knew when the fish were running and when they weren't. And,
He was a neighborhood character, you might say. Butchering, carpentering, he could do all things.
then you go on, was it the next place or where?
Oh,
George Meisner.
George
George
Meisner.
Meisner. Lord.
My brother Richard, I think, worked for him some.
Did he?
He had his liquor buried in the garden. Sometimes, not only get the silver.
Yeah. Yeah. And you went down Boulevard, there was the Lee brothers. Yeah. Remember them at all? Yeah.
When I first started in the township here, I started as an assessor, and it was at the beginning of the war there, I guess it was. So the council asked me, the Red Cross came in at that time, made a plea for raising funds for the war effort. So the council asked me when I was going around doing assessing in the spring to collect for the Red Cross at the same time. And everybody responded, but I got into these, and which, there was two of them.
Yeah.
Eve and Ed, wasn't it? I guess it was Ed.
They're two brothers.
Table, so I
Abe
Abe and Ed.
Yeah, Eve and Ed.
and Henry.
Ed.
And
Henry.
Three of them.
Henry, yes.
whether there was 3 then or maybe just 2. One I didn't see because it was a bad part.
One, I guess, didn't go out.
He didn't go out. A little worse than that. A little
worse than the one.
But anyway, I spoke to the one, I don't remember which one it was. I told him what I was doing, and I was collecting for the Red Cross. He had a strange laugh, like giggle. You want to make a donation? So he shuffled around and had coats hanging on the wall on the door, big coats. He fished around the coats, so I thought, well, he's getting some money out naturally. Came out with a penny.
I was going to say, come up with a
They used to go to Well for their flour, and provisions would go to Well, most of the flour, that might have on bags at that time. One of them was the driver of the team, the wagon, the other one was the settlement, with his feet out the back of the wagon. That's the way they drive to what all the time, go by our house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was.
I remember a little story my dad used to tell. That wasn't a story, it was true. But this Carl Herber, Chippewa, he had a store in Chippewa, the general store there. And this lady come in this day with 2 pounds of butter. And they used to trade butter off for different groceries, They'd bring eggs and butter in. So anyway, she said to him, this butter here that I got, she said, I'm just going to tell you about it. But she said, there was a mouse selling cream. And she said, I know what fell in there, so she said, I don't want to use that butter. But she said, I'll trade it for some of your butter, and because anybody that gets it don't know it, it won't hurt them. So anyway, he was pretty smart too. He took her 2 pounds of butter, went to the back of the store and put different wrappers on it and give it back.
You know who that was?
Yeah,
I know our store.
Yeah.
Larry Meyer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Come to think of it,
Yeah,
there were
she
quite a
said,
few,
what they won't know won't hurt them.
2 individuals around, weren't there?
Yeah, there's quite some characters around in the early days.
Well, of course, these families, to some extent, remember the family when they retired when they were young, of course, they stayed together.
Yeah,
The older ones took care of it. My goodness, it was all, a number of families. The Deepbacks over here, George Deepback, and the Sauer family up there next to us, just above us. Kings had,
I remember back, I was in my early teens, quite early. My dad at one time collected cream for my dad was a creamery, John M. Shirk. Sure, maybe you would remember my dad was a creamery.
John Shirk?
Yeah, John M. Shirk. Well, anyway, this was after cars came along, but we had a snowstorm one winter. And my dad had collected cream before when we lived up on House Road yet, so Shirk called us asking if we would collect cream. They couldn't get through with the trucks, and we had this route down the boulevard up the Saturday. So we left home quite early. When I went along with my dad, I suppose I was around 14, possibly somewhere along there, maybe 15. It was 15 anyway. But anyway, we started out, that Fort area, Wally Stockville, we got cream there. We had a fine, my dad was a great horseman. We had a fine team of black and Sorrow and all. They were right up there, Nice, bright, sunshiny day, cold, but still, down the boulevard, came up, went in here to the Deepbacks, and Dad said, we're going to get the cream, so I grabbed the door. When this lady came to the door, grabbed my cream pail, away she went, couldn't say a word, couldn't speak a word. But that floor was just as clean as this, just scrubbed white, real old pine floor, just scrubbed white. George wasn't home at the time, but the other fellow, he was out in the barnyard pulling straw out of the straw stack to fed the cows. Yeah. I remember that. It was a long day, we didn't get on the way after dark. Last stop we had was John Deewick up there.
Oh, yeah.
I called home and said we were on the way, you know. My mother wouldn't worry about us. Yeah.
More about selling quick, down the shore. You remember what you remember so quick.
Oh, Lord, yes.
He gathered cream for sure.
Yes, oh, yeah.
With a ticket wagon.
Yeah.
And, 3 or 4 of these 40-gallon steel drums.
Yeah.
Put the cream in.
Yeah, so fine.
He weighed it. No, he didn't weigh it.
Yeah, they had a scale in the back end. Sure, oh, yeah, it'll be a mean scale with a little crack, you know.
Scale in the back of the wagon.
That's right, oh, sure.
Well, my grandmother sold cream for quite a while down the short, little bigger gallon. He'd always come around the back of the house and we kept the cream in the basement at that time. We had no refrigerator or anything like that. He'd go down the steps, the Taylor cream, container until 48 or 50 pounds of cream. So that'd be wrong. So high. He'd grab that. Out he'd go one day in the summer, he was barefoot. He was barefoot and wearing overall, coveralls. Out putting him in the road and walking right along. Caught his toe and he passed like, and oh, he went screaming off. Spilt the whole thing in the front yard before he got to the road. I don't know what he done up there, but we got paid for 50 pounds of cream, I know that.
They have little sample bottles, eh, that they sample the cream, the butter fat, take it up there, and they test it. If the butter fat, little bottle goes so high, stir the old cream up, and you go,
That's what I go, oh, like cream and all.
Well, that was the forerunner then of Orville sugar.
yes, oh, yeah, yeah.
To collect the biggest cream.
All the sort of been collected afterwards, he had a drop.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's time to, unless there's something else of interest.
I think we could go on.
We could go on.
Yeah, that's right.
I think some folks have had a lot of patience with it.
Down here.
We will have chapter 2 next month.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much. I enjoyed it.
Interesting.
Certainly, it was interesting. About as much history in this area as where you're.
Well, yes, I do, you know, as I say, because great-grandfather came down here, and then my mother's parents, grandparents, my mother's mother was from down here, and she was another. My granddad, my mother's side, I don't know, he came over from Germany when he was 16 years old. And I don't know, he must have come right down here because he married that. I don't imagine he was terribly old when he was married because, gosh, he had 8 children, or 9 rather. So I think that he probably came over and maybe worked down here in this neighborhood and got acquainted with another.
I was just last Sunday, as a matter of fact, Russell and the whaler down at our place for a few minutes. We were talking about past times. And of course, your mother was a first cousin to my mother.
Yeah.
And I was relating how I can just remember that I was pretty young. They used to exchange on New Year's or Christmas, New Year's usually, for meals.
Yeah.
And it was our turn to have your parents and Knoxville's sister one New Year's, and it was storming.
It was Christmas.
Was it Christmas?
Christmas, yeah.
I guess it was.
I was telling the kids about that.
I
It was
remember
Christmas. Yeah.
we had a nice Christmas tree up in the front room in the parlor, and all decorated, and we had a goose, and you couldn't get there.
Couldn't get there.
And I really was downcast about that.
That would have
Storm, so
been,
you couldn't see across the room.
yeah. That would have been 1921, I think. 21 or 22, probably one or the other. I'm not sure. No, we started out, we had a Model T Ford. My dad bought a new Model T Ford in the spring of 1921. And we started out with this Model T Ford, and I think we had chains on. we got over, my mother's sister, Knoxville, they were going down too, you know. They were all first cousins to his mother, eh? And we got to Knoxville. They had a baby grand. They bought that in about 1919, I guess. So we started out, we got down as far as John Miller's at the end of the Ridge Road, the Bone Road. We didn't get no farther. Then we all had dinner there. No, his mother had dinner already.
Well, I don't remember whether it was 21 or 22.
Well, I don't either.
I think it was 22.
It could have been 22.
When our addition was built.
Yeah.
The kitchen and the house.
Yeah, it could have been
21,
22.
it would have been the old front.
Yeah.
22.
Yeah, possibly was. Might have been the year after we had a car. John Miller, he started to go home with the car while he went along with the team with the sleigh. Where we couldn't go with the car, where he could tow us, and then we could go again. But
I don't think my grandfather was living. He died in
well, my grandfather, grandfather died in the fall of 1920. And he was living then, your grandfather, he was living then, because I remember him being up at the house. So it wasn't,
21 or 20,
yeah.
early 22.
Yeah. Of course, he went over to your aunt's in the wintertime.
Yes, but died at our place.
Oh, did he?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Well, I'll never forget that. It was at night. He got me up, and he was in bed upstairs, and then they got the undertaker, Bert Clancy,
Yeah.
and did all work.
Oh, yeah, they did, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'll never forget, he carried the body downstairs. I saw him carry the body downstairs. He took it to the front room.
Yeah. So they used to have a little canopy they put until they got a casket.
Yeah, well, he carried big suitcases in.
Yeah, I remember my granddad.
He put a, what do they call them on the door?
Really?
Oh, yeah,
Great.
that's the first thing you left.
Not a wreath, they
Well,
had a
something.
special name.
Yes.
Yes.
Great, great, great.
Yeah.
There's a subject for a meeting one night.
Hanging the crate.
When you were speaking of cars, it made me think of the first one that we ever had. Willoughby, this is my brother, who's older, the oldest of the family. And he brought it home one Saturday night after we were all in bed, and saw it standing there, and the next morning it was a yellow Cadillac. Paid $25 for
That was cheaper than the other day.
The seat was up higher than the front. I needed seat belts.
I was up to our new store there in Ridgeway this afternoon to Oldford's, and they had an old Model T Ford sitting there. And guess what year it was, eh? You get $30 worth of groceries. I forgot what I put in there. I don't know, I put 1914 or 15. It had the brass Vader, you know. It was an oldie.
What about the fenders? Were they straight out or were they curved?
Oh, they were straight out. It was a runabout. So I know it was, you know, it was in before the 20s quite a bit. So we got our first 21, and that was the sedan. They didn't make sedans until along in 1920. They was touring cars before that. We've seen quite a change in our day, haven't we, Fred?
Oh, I've seen a little, yes.
He's quite a bit over I am yet.
Well, would you ever have known about that car that Charlie Whale had? He had a seat that he put down over the front, in front of the, I don't know how he could see the drive, but he used to pick up those kids on the way to school, you know, and we'd have to sit out on that and we were scared to death. I don't know how he could see the drive, but we were sitting out there on the lady, and the thing came down like this. We were like on a shelf.
First car ride I ever had was with my mother down here. Went to the falls. That would have been about 1916. Yeah, along there. My brother died in 1914, and we came down on a visit. We drove down to the falls. It was a shed, 490 touring.
490 touring.
Yeah, 490 touring.
He bought his children to at Fort Fire somewhere, and we bought it all over August.
Is that right? Yeah. So there you go.
Just the problem.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I know. Katie, Mike, he was driving, you know, Katie, she was storming away. Now be careful, Mike. Don't run in, don't go too close, Mike. You know, the taxi driving her all the time.
Even as backseat driver said.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even drive from the back seat.
Good thing you can't. Oh, boy, yeah.
Thank you very much. Cup of tea.
That all the work, so it's still on. Push one, push switch on.
Yeah.
The lights.
I'm gonna bring my pillow next time. When you guys come back. I didn't say anything, but I was.
Grandson's
And I get the tape, you know.
as a mom to her.
I have to listen to that tape. And usually I start laughing before the funny stuff comes because I know what's coming. I did that one day.